Coming up, an Alabama player is unhappy with Auburn's latest antic, and he's speaking out about it on social media. We'll tell you all about it next, right here on SEC Country Live. Hello everyone, welcome to SEC Country Live. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Alabama All-American Mike Johnson. We're glad you're with us. Mike, I'm glad you're here. A lot of comments, a lot of fun. The weather is beautiful. What a great time of year.
Yeah, no, I got to be honest with you. So yesterday I was sad. I was sad about spring coming to an end. Now I'm more excited, I guess, to get the games underway this weekend because a lot of good spring games.
Oh, I'm so ready for it, ready to get that going. Also ready for the fall as well, especially when these rivalries keep being sort of spiced up by some of the commentary that's out there. Let me start with item number one on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list here. And, you know, the Iron Bowl has been pretty fun here during this offseason. There's been some back and forth between the Auburn folks, the Alabama folks. That's not really any different than any other year. But maybe Auburn's latest decision here maybe spices this up just a little bit more. Auburn, the reigning SEC West winner. I don't know that a division is worthy of thinking of as a championship, but apparently Auburn disagrees. Auburn's showing on Twitter that they're going to give all their players championship rings, and I say this in quotation marks, about the 2017 SEC West. This from Auburn saying how the West was won, referencing the 40-17 score over Georgia, the 26-14 score over Alabama, hashtag hungry, hashtag War Eagle, and there is the ring. This feels very participation trophy-esque. I do have to admit that. You know, it seems like for the SEC folks, then I think Danny Cannell made this point, and I'll steal it from him, who want to sort of bang on UCF for sort of self-proclaimed national championship. Boy, this Auburn West Division championship ring seems like we're kind of going back down that same road, right?
Yeah, I don't love the idea, but I'm actually I'm not going to badmouth Auburn for this. And here's the bottom line. This is full disclosure for you guys. I got a ring just like this at home.
Did you really?
I got a ring just like this sitting at home from 2008.
Did you give them out?
We won the West, went undefeated. We lost to Florida, lost to Utah in the Sugar Bowl. So I got one just like it sitting at home. I've never put it on my finger. Never wanted to wear it. Was never happy about getting it. But here's what
you give it to your boy Scotty Cochran. He'll be banging that thing with a mallet.
Sledgehammer. But here's what it did. Nick Saban goes in and he puts the ring on his table, and a lot of people, the ring was huge. I mean, all these recruits, they start walking in. Oh, you guys went undefeated. Yeah, I remember that game against Florida last year. You know, recruits trying on rings, recruits trying to do it. That's what it is. It's a recruiting tool. It's not so much, hey guys, look what we did. It's great. It's a recruiting tool. It's something to shed light on the incredible season, really, that Auburn did have last year. And as much as I want to hate on it, I understand why they did it.
And, you know, you understand why they did it, but you also understand why it's going to get some degree of negative attention, including one Alabama player who had seen the ring on social media, kind of fired off his on tweet on that. Let me show you this. It's Terrell Lewis who says, "This is sad." That's his response to that. And, you know, while I sort of disagree with the idea of the division championship ring, it sort of feels like, you know, and as you said, Auburn, I guess, not the first ones to do this. That's worth pointing out here. But it feels like we're sort of heading down that Butch Jones champion of life trail here where, you know, Jones famously gave out the rings for winning a regular season game against Virginia Tech in the Battle of Bristol.
Yeah.
This sort of feels like the thing of no matter how the season goes, we're going to make a championship ring for something. This sort of, it feels like it goes down that road. But this is where I do have to say, of all the teams that could be critical of Auburn here, it does feel like Alabama's the one that has to sit this round out because in the head-to-head battle, Auburn can say, yeah, but we beat you. And then Alabama could say, we came back and won the national championship. But Auburn says, we played once, we won the game.
Yeah. You
got to sit this criticism out. That's what an Auburn guy, I think, would say to Alabama here.
And that's what makes this such an interesting topic, right? Because when we have this conversation, if Bama never won the national championship, Auburn would have the bragging rights. Auburn went on the SEC game, and Bama would have to keep their mouth shut. But here we are sitting there with, you know, and we talk about this every year. It's the same way with every rivalry in every state around the country as far as college football goes, where it's the battle of the state. It's a battle for state pride. It's a battle for, you know, on the line. It's Georgia, Florida, or Georgia Tech, or, you know, it's state pride. Well, one guy won the game, the other one won the ultimate prize, which is the national title. So that's why this discussion is so fun. If they don't win a national title, guess what? Terrell Lewis is not opening his mouth. That's the bottom line. Terrell Lewis can say it's sad all he wants to. I was there 10 years ago, buddy. I'm sorry to tell you, we came up short. So, you know, we ended up getting the same ring. So I wouldn't cast any stones.
This is why this year's version of the Iron Bowl, when you finally get there in November, I think it's going to be sort of an extra juicy version of the rivalry here because and we've kind of gone round and round about this, and the Alabama fans don't like when I say this. I'm not intentionally trying to stir up trouble, but there is an element of the reigning national champions that doesn't shut up the bragging rights that Auburn has.
Yeah.
You're reigning national champions, but Auburn can say, yeah, but we played once. Yeah. We were the winner. There is an element of Auburn's bragging rights here that are not completely disqualified by Alabama's eventual national championship.
Yeah, and I, as an Alabama fan, I get jealous of Georgia because they got the second crack at them. They got to get the bragging rights back. They got to kind of have that second go-around to make sure that it was on a neutral field, and they got their bragging rights back. Alabama just didn't have that opportunity. You go on and win the national title, but that game against Auburn is always a very big deal. So I agree with you to where it's going to be a little bit spicier this year. I think that it has been in the past because – Bama kind of rolls on. They go into that game 11-0 a lot of times in the past few years, and they just weren't able to pull it off last year.
Let me get some comments here on Facebook Live. Matt Goodwin says, I mean, they did win the West. Let me go back to your point. You said, hey, I've got no leg to stand on here because when I won a division in 2008, we got rings too. Yeah. Let me ask you a slightly different question, though, referencing what Matt says right there. Do you think teams should get rings for winning a division? It does help with recruiting, there's no doubt about that, but should we have like a ring czar here that says, okay, conference champions will give you one, national champions will give you one, bowl gifts will give you those.
Right.
We're not giving out division rings. Yeah. Should the SEC commissioner step in on this and say?
It's tough for me because I understand why Auburn did it. Now, they didn't win the Peach Bowl. I think that nobody would have said anything about this ring if it said Peach Bowl champions across it.
Good point.
It had the scores for everything else. But you didn't beat UCF in the Peach Bowl. And I think that's where it's tough to draw the line because you got to have guys that get bowl rings. Do you just do it for New Year's bowl rings? Do you do it for any bowl ring when you go to to the SEC teams that go to bowl games? Do they all get?
I like the bowls that give you the watches. Now I don't have a watch on today, but I like the bowls that give you the watches. That's always nice.
To be honest with you, so here's how that works. That is a bowl gift, right? Like if you go to the Cotton Bowl gives you a watch. Says, hey, thanks for participating, thanks for coming. You win the Cotton Bowl. University of Alabama was like, we're going to give you the ring because I got every time we won a bowl game, I got one of each. It was like, hey, we got. Yeah, I don't know if we got an Independence Bowl ring. I can't really remember back on that one, but we got rings for winning bowl games, and we got watches for going to them.
Yakova Simba in the Facebook comment section says Auburn is so smart they want to be in the news. It's worth pointing out. Yakova is also a Georgia fan here. Is it smart to sort of constantly find ways to sort of regenerate some hype and some publicity? Is that a smart thing? Because it's actually. Even if I don't like the ring, I sort of agree with that point.
Yeah, and listen, this comes up a lot when we talk about Lane Kiffin, right? He's always finding a way to kind of stay in the news. He pokes at Nick Saban, pokes at Alabama, pokes at these things that will end up being a big deal. So I don't mind it. I don't know that having your own West championship ring and putting the scores on Twitter. I think that's what irritates me more than anything. Put the scores for the Georgia and Alabama game on the Twitter and say hungry and with the West and all this stuff. So. I don't know, man. I would love to have some kind of definitive answer for you, but I'm not sure this is not a blurred line.
We'll talk more about it. You can weigh in with your comments. We'll take some YouTube comments here in just a moment. Let me move on to item number 2, though, here on our SEC Country Live First in 10 list. Tennessee getting ready for its spring game on Saturday. Jeremy Pruitt wants a big stadium crowd there at Neyland Stadium to sort of impress recruits and put some attention on his 2018 version of the Vols. But before we get there was one more scrimmage to deal with for Tennessee. And once again, I want you to listen to Jeremy Pruitt here. Yeah. It's more of that same sort of theme that he's echoed a lot this spring. A little happier with the offense and the defense. Judge for yourself based on Pruitt right here. Take a listen.
One good thing, just looking at the scrimmage, I felt like offensively we created a few more explosive plays. One thing that we have got to improve on is we got to finish some plays, some opportunities that we had. I thought our running backs competed well with the ball in their hand, and I thought they blocked well, so that was good to see. We protected the quarterback and gave him a little bit of a chance to, both of them, to have some success defensively. Didn't create enough turnovers. To me, not a lot of cleanup tackle, not playing the way you should play on defense. If you play the right way, then the runners don't want to run the ball, and we've got to improve on that.
Am I reading too much into this if I say I'm a little worried for Tennessee that boy, Pruitt's having a hard time finding good things to say about this defense. Now, maybe this is just maybe a strict teacher grading on a tough curve. Obviously, Pruitt loves good defense.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing about explosive plays from the offense. When I look at that roster, and I'm not really quite sure who the explosive playmakers are, that makes me really concerned for that Tennessee defense. After all, the presumed starting quarterback is not even on campus right now. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's tough to kind of look at this roster. And by the way, there's problems on offense too. I can't wait to turn on this Tennessee spring game this weekend because I can't wait to see who's playing offensive line for them. I don't know. I think they have 8 healthy offensive linemen, and 2 of those are early enrollees. So you're really, really dealing with a lack of depth at so many positions on the football field for Tennessee, the secondary being one of the big ones. I don't even know. You could talk to the biggest Tennessee insider there is. I don't even think they knew who the starting corners are going to be because they lose so much talent off last year's team. They didn't have a ton of talent in the cupboard as it was. So you're trying to piece these guys together. Until some of these younger guys get on the field, it's going to be hard for Jeremy Pruitt to look at it and say, boy, we're really building a championship caliber defense, because look at the defenses he's been coaching.
Yeah.
Florida State, Alabama, Georgia.
Yeah.
He's seen what championship caliber defenses look like. Tennessee's not near that just yet.
I just don't really know quite what the theme is. I mean, we'll talk more about the Florida spring game later on the show. It was pretty clear what they wanted the theme to be coming out of that game. It's all fun and gun back at Florida again. Everybody's happy. Everybody's having a good time. I haven't quite seen a theme develop for Tennessee as of yet. I mean, Tyson Helton gave some language towards, we want to be an up-tempo offense. We want to have fun play calling here as well. But overall, this seems to be a 2018 spring practice for Tennessee that doesn't really have a unifying message to it yet.
I don't know that Tennessee fans want a theme, though. I mean, like, we're going to get into the Florida spring game later, and obviously I think Florida spring game had a theme, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so when I look at Tennessee, I just think this is going to be a smash mouth spring game. I think that Jeremy Pruitt is going to use this as an opportunity, like he has all spring, to try to instill the toughness and the physical football ability that he's been trying to get this team to play around. So when I look at it, I think smash mouth football. I mean, you're going to have to try to somehow field 2 offensive lines. I think they're going to be doing goal line packages. I think they're going to be doing short yardage. I don't think that Jeremy Pruitt is a theme type of guy, and I think Tennessee's okay with that.
Esteban Esteves on the YouTube comments section, I referenced a moment ago the fact that Jeremy Pruitt's also calling for a big crowd there in Knoxville. Esteban says, Pruitt's not getting a big crowd. He didn't apply himself like Mullen did. Mullen certainly took the laps around campus here with the frat houses and the sorority houses and things like that. This is sort of Johnny-come-lately for Jeremy Pruitt of, hey, we want a full stadium on Saturday. It's a little late to start making that pitch. Should you have even said it at all? Because
I don't mind it. Listen, Philip Fulmer's been the face of this program for Jeremy Pruitt. You know, he's been, I'm not trying to stir it up, but he's been sitting in the back seat. Philip Fulmer's doing the radio interviews. He's doing the rounds as far as being the face of what this program is. And I think for right now, Jeremy Pruitt's okay with that. But I think that he has to be a little bit more ahead of it. I agree with you to an extent. Getting out ahead of this thing saying, hey, we want a full stadium. I don't think you just do it at the last minute and it just happens. But I'm sure he'd love it. I don't mind him coming out and saying it. I'm sure that's on his docket.
Is there a chance, and then after this we'll talk about Florida here for a moment. They got some news breaking, but relatively breaking. Is there a chance here that Tennessee's spring game is actually a pleasant surprise? Because right now my expectations for good football are lower than the bottom of this table.
Yeah.
I am just not expecting much from Tennessee. Is there a chance that it's a more pleasant surprise than I sort of think it's going to be right now?
I'm just not sure how. I mean, I'm really not. I think that they have a chance that their front seven could be decent. They could have a front seven. I think that Darren Kirkland coming back is a big deal. I think they've got some talent up front on the defensive line. But the secondary, to me, I don't know what's going on back there. Offensive line, for me, I'm not sure what they're going to put on the field. I'm not sure what quarterback's going out with the ones. I sure don't know who the playmakers have been at wide receiver. And so with all those questions, I'm not sure how that comes together to make a great spring game. Now, I think there's other teams dealing with the same thing. I'm not sure what LSU spring game is going to look like either. But I'm excited for Jeremy Pruitt and for Tennessee fans to just see something different on the field. It's not gimmicky. It's not this spread, kind of zone thing. They're going to play smash mouth football, and I think that people are excited.
Teresa Stewart, who is a Tennessee fan, by the way, in the Facebook comment section says, I don't care what they do in the spring. It's the fall that matters. But don't you want to see some playmaker, some sort of difference maker, some sort of sure thing, lockdown answer at some position? Because right now, Tennessee is one of the 3 weakest rosters in the SEC, I believe. I
think you want to see a smooth brand of football. And that's why I was so impressed with Texas A&M the other day. Because Texas A&M looked like a football team that was on the rise. It wasn't, I don't remember what coach said it. It was just too herky-jerky. It might have been Pruitt. It might have been Dan Mullen that used that phrase, herky-jerky. You want something smooth. You want it to look like the quarterbacks are kind of in sequence where they're finding their reads. Maybe he's not getting hit every play, because that's what the scary thing is, I think, for Tennessee. That offensive line they're putting together, You can't judge a quarterback competition if the quarterback's getting hit in the mouth on every play.
I've got some good news for you, by the way. Going back to our original topic about Auburn, their SEC West rings. Brandon Walker, our buddy from the More Cowbell SEC Country Mississippi State show, running the official account for us on Facebook Live today, says good news for you and me. We've got commission SEC Live rings coming right here.
Well, that'd be great.
Don't think I wouldn't wear that thing every single day.
That'd be the first thing that I've got that says SEC Country on it.
Now you're bringing up a touchy subject, Brandon. Thank you very much in the comment section. By the way, for those of you that watch on Facebook, you may notice Brandon in there. He is running the official SEC Country account. Brandon's a great guy. Last Thursday, he actually sat in for Mike Johnson, so Brandon's a terrific SEC personality, and so he's kind of in there kind of messing around with us a little bit in the comment section. We're happy to have him there, and yeah, we got to get you one of these SEC Country shirts eventually, especially get rid of that.
Listen, Brandon Walker also thinks Mississippi State is at least a 10-win team next year. So if you guys want to talk to him about that,
by all
make sure
means.
to hit him up in the comment section.
By all means, let him know about that. All right, let's do item number 3 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. You know, earlier this week, we let you hear a little audio from Dan Mullen with his challenge to his quarterbacks going into the summer. Saw some things, I guess, that he liked both on the Orange and Blue debut game and during the spring, but overall, he still sees a ways to go. Here's what he says about why he thinks quarterback's the most crucial position this offseason and what he wants to see from the guys at that position. Here's Dan Mullen.
I want to see a lot more out of them moving forward. I saw some really good things. I saw some missed simple things. It gets into the speed of the decision-making, comfort of the offense. And I'll watch them make a great read and get to a second or third read in the progression pretty quickly, make a great throw, move the chains. And then the next one, I'll watch them miss the first read and try to launch one down the field or miss an easy throw that they should make. I'll be honest, there's no more important position during the summer for those guys to work on their own every day, muscle memory. Taking steps, footwork, throw in motion. I don't care if they're even throwing to receivers. Everything over and over and over again so that they are much better players August 4th than they were today.
So that is Dan Mullen saying he needs his quarterbacks to be better players at the start of summer practice than they are right now. What we find out, though, is that list of guys trying to work and impress Dan Mullen is now one name shorter, as Jake Allen, the one-time Florida recruit going back to the Jim McElwain era, has announced his intention to leave the program. Here's what he put up on social media about that. He wanted to extend his appreciation to Florida, the coaches that brought him in, but he says he's been committed to the Gators since the summer of his sophomore year. Very sad to say goodbye to Gator Nation. Look forward to this new chapter in my life. And this, in some respects, is not a surprise for 2 reasons. A, Allen doesn't fit the mold of what Dan Mullen's looking for. You can also say that there's some other quarterbacks in this roster that don't necessarily either, but Allen is among them. And he just never quite really found his home there. McElwain and Nussmeier did bring him in, but even they weren't really using him. Yeah. So Jake Allen now makes a move to go find a new home. And while I wish Allen well, and really any transfer player, I hope they all find a place to play in a college home they can be happy. I guess there is one sort of perspective on this that almost makes it seem like good news for Florida fans in that he's not leaving unless he felt like other guys had a stranglehold on this job. Whether it be, Trask above him, Franks as the starter, even Emory Jones passing him by, he has seen things from other quarterbacks that make him think somewhere else is better for me. And while Florida fans don't wish ill on Allen, it is probably good news for them that he sees the other quarterbacks as more cemented.
I definitely think so. Listen, anytime you're splitting reps with an early enrollee with the threes, and that's what he's been doing with Emory Jones, I think the writing's on the wall. So I don't know if it's so much the 2 quarterbacks in front of him as it is, listen, I know what I am, I know what I can be, and this is not it for me. I know that I can go start somewhere, I know that I can get in a pro-style offense, and I know I have a good arm. And so I don't fault him for thinking that at all, and I don't think Florida fans are going to miss him because I don't think he fit into what Dan Mullen wanted as a quarterback. The first name, though, that popped into my head, is the name we talked about a couple of months ago, Joe Burrows, the Ohio State quarterback. If you're talking about filling out a quarterback roster and trying to get in the grad transfer market, he's a guy who could be coming up pretty soon out of that Ohio State camp. He's asked Urban Meyer to tell him if he's possibly going to be a starting quarterback. I'm just telling you, I'm starting to connect a couple of dots on that, and that's the first thing I wanted to address.
On Facebook, Morgan Recton talking about the same thing, says, my question is, what if Burrow does lose his job at Ohio State? Chatter, he does. You look at Florida as a landing zone there. Now I have no idea if he wants to, but he is solid. So Morgan Recton kind of agreeing with you on that point. And we actually talked about that at one point. It's been a while ago now.
It's been a couple of months ago.
We talked about that on SEC Country Live at one point.
And
I'd forgotten about it, but you're right.
I'm going to go ahead and bring up, though, what the topic is going to be when this starts to come up again. if Dan Mullen is recruiting Joe Burrows, because Joe Burrows has said, listen, if I'm not starting, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
If Dan Mullen's recruiting Joe Burrows, what does that say about the quarterbacks he already has on the roster?
Oh, I think we know. Yeah, no,
you can kind of flip that around backwards from how you feel about Jake Allen. Then you start to say, boy, if Dan Mullen's, what's he telling this kid to make him say, listen, we've got a spot for you down here?
And it's worth pointing out that going back to Ohio State spring game last weekend, Urban Meyer, if I'm not mistaken, was pretty mum on all of that. The way these coaches are, he doesn't want guys to transfer out of the program. He wants to keep guys there. They are loaded. You know, Tate Martell is there right now. Burrow, who you mentioned. But it seems like that Meyer wasn't really tipping his hand too much as to, who that guy might be. But let me change the subject for a minute if you don't mind, because on the subject of Jake Allen, more of a drop back passer, fitting the Doug Nussmeier offense better and the Jim McElwain offense better than he probably fits the Dan Mullen offense. How about for the quarterbacks who are currently on the team? The Ohio State transfer, we'll wait and find out about that. I do think that's something interesting and worth paying attention to. What's more likely to happen? What needs to happen? A guy like Felipe Franks evolves and becomes more of what Dan Mullen needs his quarterback to be, which is more of a runner. They tried to show that some during the spring. Or Mullen evolves his offense for at least 1 year to fit the quarterbacks he currently has. Because Felipe Franks is not a Dan Mullen quarterback either. Kyle Trask wouldn't be either, but Franks is probably the starter. But that's not a Mullen guy. That's not a Mullen-type quarterback.
I think Mullen does what he can possibly do with Trask or Franks. I think he tries to do the most thing he can do, because he mentioned it. Listen, I don't need a game breaker. I don't need somebody that's, some kind of crazy 4.4 speed type 40 guy. I need somebody that can just pull the ball and go get 10 yards and put it on film. That way, that defensive end that's crashing down the run game knows that that threat is there. You also have a guy in the backfield or on that offense in Kadarius Toney that can run some of these plays. If Dan Mullen gets into these situations where, hey, I have to have a running quarterback, I need somebody dynamic, Kadarius Toney has proven that he can fill that role for them. So I think he'll start to mold it around whatever he has. Now, do I think that he wishes he had 4.4 speed at quarterback? Absolutely, but that's not the hand that Dan Mullen's being dealt right now.
Katie McCarty also brings up a good point in the YouTube comment section, which is, any kind of contact between Mullen and, is it Burrow, that's the Ohio State quarterback's name? Any kind of contact there obviously couldn't come until Burrow officially announced his intention to transfer.
Yeah, definitely could not, but the writing's on the wall. And Burrow, the thing that's different about this is Burrow's not the kind of guy that's sitting around saying, boy, I can't wait till they tell me if I'm starting or not. He's basically said, listen, if I'm not named the starter by May, I'm getting out of here. And I think that's what makes this difference, because the relationship between Dan Mullen and Urban Meyer is the one to keep an eye on.
And here's the one thing, players also know. It's like, it's one thing for the public to find out you've been named the starter behind closed doors. Everybody knows who's better, and everybody knows who the coach's favorite is. So Burrow, I'm guessing here, like a lot of these players wouldn't have to wait until be officially anointed the starter. If you're not named the starter, you're not the starter, and that's all he needs to know.
I just think that, and obviously we're probably getting way off topic here talking about an Ohio State player, but he comes out after the spring game and basically forces Urban Meyer's hand and says, listen, I'm not staying here to sit on the bench for 4 years. I will go somewhere where I can play, and I'm graduating in May. So he's basically saying, balls in Urban Meyer's court, you need to tell me I'm the starter.
Christopher White says Dan Mullen's betting on everyone. This is on Facebook, by the way. Dan Mullen's betting on everything on finding that next Tim Tebow. He doesn't have that player on this team. What it really reminds me of is Urban Meyer circa, I guess, 2005 was his first year at Florida, where he didn't have the personnel on that team to run his offense either. And remember, about halfway through the season, they started running, putting fullbacks in the game. They started, stop trying to run the Urban Meyer style spread, and for a while just use the personnel they had to play the kinds of games that that personnel was sort of suited for. For 1 year, Meyer in 2005 had to be a different coach, and by 2006, he had Tebow and everything was sort of ready to go at that point.
Right, and you had a guy in Chris Leak who wasn't unathletic. That's kind of what I'm saying is, he just needed a guy in that 1 year where, listen, I just need you to be able to pull the ball every now and then and get around the edge. We used to run zone read plays with Greg McElroy. I mean, we used to do it all the time. Once every 3 games, he'd pull it and get about 20 yards. And you know what? That would be on film, and those defensive ends would have to respect that for the rest of the year.
And as Brandon Walker reminds us of in the Facebook comment section, it was Dan Mullen who was that offensive coordinator back in 2005. All right, let's do item number 4 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. I thought this was a pretty interesting piece of audio from LSU linebacker Devin White, who I would say that you and I would both agree he is on the shortest of short lists to possibly be the top player in the SEC, regardless of position this year. This is a really impressive player, and White is really impressed with defensive coordinator Dave Aranda. Apparently, they've even got some surprises in store for the 2018 season. May not see them this Saturday for their spring game, but by the time Miami rolls around, maybe for sure. Here's what Devin White said about that.
We got a lot of stuff that we want to run in the spring game. We're going to keep it simple, but, just when we come September when we play in Miami, you know, we'll pull some stuff out the hat that nobody has seen before because we just put it in this spring.
I find this believable because I find, you know, what people say about Dave Aranda, that he's on, you know, the legit list of top defensive coordinators in the entire sport. The expectation is he will really dial up something here for 2018. He's gone from Baton Rouge after this year, probably almost for sure a head coach at some level, I'm guessing here. And he wants to take this talent that he has right now. You know, you bring in Terrence Alexander, the transfer. You got Bring Fihoko, the transfer defensive lineman. Got another year of Devin White here. You know, make this unit into something. Go get you a head coaching job. I would imagine that Aranda is very motivated this year to do something big with this LSU defense.
Yeah, no, I agree. When you've got the players, not only the good players, the top tier players, at the positions that they have, because listen, talk about blitzes, talk about being exotic. Guess what you have to, if you're going to bring a blitz off this edge, you got to have a lockdown corner on that side. Greedy Williams is that guy. You have to have a linebacker in the middle who has been there, who can run things, who can point out directions. You've got that in Devin White. You've got John Battle back in the back end. You've got people, especially in the central parts of this defense, to know what's going on. Now, I'm not telling you this defense is the most talented LSU's ever had, but they've got a lot of guys in a lot of the right places if you want to be more exotic this year. You've been around Dave Aranda for a couple of years. You can really start to let that thing get in, and you can really start to dive deeper into what he wants to be defensively.
Now, I guess there is some thought here. Devin White tipping the hand of, hey, Miami, we got some surprises in store for you.
No doubt.
At that point in time, Miranda's probably like, could you just not say that part of it? Now, the chances of Miami sort of figuring that out just based on those somewhat cryptic words from White, not that great, not that likely. But I guess if you're Dave Aranda, you're like, just keep that to yourself. There's a reason we're going to be vanilla for the spring game. We're trying to be vanilla with our comments here too.
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, what are you doing if you're Mark Richt down in Miami? You're thinking, boy, what could they possibly do here? Let's go back into Dave Aranda's film, and then you get them off topic anyway. So I don't know that Dave Aranda hates it. You're getting into the mind if you start looking that deep into it.
And by the way, you know, our LSU buddies over in the YouTube comment section, I knew this was coming. They do this every day. Cliff Nelson, who's a big LSU fan, says, check the stats. Devin White outplayed last year's Buckets Award winner Roquan Smith. Esteban Estevez said Roquan played more games than White. Devin had 3 games less to compile the stats that he put up. Tyler Mann, also an LSU fan, says LSU's going to have the best defensive line in the country, not just the SEC. So he's obviously high on his defense. But why every time? I mean, I just gave Devin White a big compliment. Maybe the best player in the league this season. And the LSU people still got to start dragging up arguments from last year that White is better than Roquan Smith. Y'all know I'm a Georgia fan. I feel like Roquan's performance, speaks for itself there. But these guys got to go back down that road every single day.
It's a great debate
every single
to
day
have
with these guys.
It's a great debate to have because I've thought about this in and amongst myself because here's how I view that battle. If you really want to go into Roquan Smith versus Devin Smith, which we probably shouldn't do right now, I think Roquan was steady. I think Roquan was far above average. But I think at Devin White's height, I think he might have been better than Roquan Smith, but there was too many lows in there. I mean, if you go back and watch the Troy film, Devin White didn't show up in too many of those circumstances. So I agree with you guys on that, the LSU fans in the comment section to an extent, where I think Devin White could end up being a better player than Roquan Smith. I don't know the consistency was there.
Cliff says, check the stats. The numbers don't lie. Here's the thing. Some of the tackles that Roquan could have made were getting made by other people. I mean, he wasn't the only good player in that Georgia defense.
No, he wasn't. But Devin White's not the only good player in LSU's defense.
Last year, I don't know. It might have been a bit of a one-man gang show. But one more point, this is more serious. So if I'm this high on the LSU defense, and it sounds like you're pretty high on them as well.
Decently high.
Boy, how much am I worried about the LSU offense if I think really good defense coupled with this offense doesn't add up to too much in the way of wins? I must be pretty low on the LSU offense, and for right now I am. As high as I am on that defense of Aranda and Baton Rouge, I am the opposite on Steve Ensminger's offense.
No, yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Well, listen, I think the defense still has some holes. What is Jacob Phillips going to be at middle linebacker? How are you going to start to sort out some of those snaps? Does Braden Fihoko really, really fit in? And it sounds like he is fitting into what they want to do schematically there up front on defense. But there is nothing from this offense that is the same as it was last year. I mean, there is the coordinator's different, the philosophy's different, the quarterback's different, the offense line's different, the running back's different. Everything's different from this LSU offense. So until I really see the product start to come on the field, that's what I'm going to be what I ask questions about down in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, we'll pay close attention to that. Let's do item number 5 here on our SEC Country Live first and 10 list. And it wasn't that long ago that Auburn coach Gus Malzahn was doing a good bit of bragging about his team. When we looked at the signature accomplishment for them in 2018, it was arguably the Iron Bowl win at the end of the year against the eventual national champions Alabama. And when Malzahn, I should say that was the 2017 season, when he assesses that moment in 2017, he thinks his Tigers were the only team capable of doing that. Do you remember when Gus Malzahn said this?
We got a lot of guys coming back, and we felt all along this year that we were the only team that could beat Alabama. Of course, they ended up being that way, and we got a lot of guys coming back. I know they're very hungry, and anytime you've been close and you have everybody coming back or a lot of guys coming back, it really helps you. And I know we're going to be a hungry team. Now, you got to earn it in our league. The SEC West is a monster. Every week you got to bring your lunch, and but I really like where we're at.
So bringing a lot of guys back from the team that he says was the only one in the country capable of beating Alabama last year. Now, we've made reference this week to the over-under predicted season win totals from the online sportsbook BetDSI. They've got Auburn, third highest total in the SEC at 9. That's a game and a half below both Alabama and Georgia, which we discussed yesterday, and ahead of everybody else. You hear Malzahn there. He's pretty high in his team still. Would you go over or under 9 wins for Auburn?
You should have forced yourself to give me a half game in one direction.
Well, I'm not going to let you push.
I think 9 is right on it, though. I mean, I really do.
Come on.
Listen.
What about this show makes you think you can push on 9?
Listen, I understand. I'm just telling you, you should have given me a half game in the direction because here's what Auburn has on their schedule that forces me. First of all, I'm picking Alabama over Auburn. Auburn fans, apologize to you, but I think Alabama wins that game in Tuscaloosa this year. I'm also this year going to pick Georgia over Auburn. Those games are sealed to me. That puts me down at 10 wins. I'm not sure Auburn wins week 1 against Washington. I'm just not sure. I think that Auburn will be a much better team by the end of the year than they are in week 1 against Washington, and the Washington team is going to be really good. So Auburn, all of a sudden, Auburn's got 3 teams on their schedule that are probably going to be in the top 5 to start the season. That gets me at 9. But it's hard for me to look past that. I think they're going to have problems with LSU. They always do. I think they're going to have problems with Texas A&M. I think they're definitely going to have problems with Mississippi State. But am I favoring any one of those 3 teams over Auburn right now? Probably not. So I sit right there at 9, and I know that's a cop-out.
I am going to take Auburn week 1 versus Washington. By the way, this is a Washington team. We talk about summer hype and, off-season predictions. A lot of that goes on in the time of year we're about to come up on. You're going to hear so much about Auburn. By the time that Auburn-Washington game gets here, Washington's probably going to be the most hyped week 1 opponent for any SEC team.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be a lot of talk about that game. That's also Washington traveling a gazillion miles from home. It's like 3,000 miles from Seattle. True. This is Auburn in a stadium that it knows well, even though that it, I guess lost its last 2 games there.
It might as well be 2,000 miles for Auburn after the way they played.
But that's not necessarily true. I mean, they did lose twice in Mercedes-Benz a year ago, but they're more at home in that game than Washington's going to be. I think they're just physically tougher than Washington's going to be. I think they're a more talented roster overall. I think Auburn wins that game and then loses twice in November to Georgia and Alabama and goes 10-2. I think Auburn as an overplay here is pretty strong.
Because the way it shapes up for me too is if I'm going to go past that, if you're going to give Washington a win, and I think you're circling Alabama and Georgia as losses for Auburn right now.
Likely losses.
Does Auburn trip up somewhere along the way they did last year?
Well, almost anyone's capable of having a trip-up game, and the LSU game a year ago was certainly that. That game's in Auburn this season. You have to go to Mississippi State. That's a team that's probably going to be a top 25 team when that game's played. But as we've said before, Auburn won that game 49-10 a year ago.
Yeah.
To just flip-flop in stadiums erase 39 points of advantage for Auburn, I would suggest that it doesn't.
That's tough. That's definitely tough.
You get Texas A&M at Jordan-Hare Stadium.
And I think that's a big deal because I think Texas A&M is probably going to have that one circled as well. And so that's why I sit right at 9. But
A&M, listen, Jimbo Fisher is going to be a big problem for Auburn in the next half decade. A&M does not have the firepower to win at Auburn this year. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think home field advantage definitely kind of skews it in that direction for me. I agree with you. I think that game at Mississippi State could be a tough game for Auburn. I don't know, man. I'm not sure. I have Washington, Alabama, and Georgia, and that sits me right at 9. I would lean towards the under and maybe them tripping up some.
Boy, I'm getting hammered on YouTube here. Tyler Mann says BA is an undercover Auburn fan and a full-time LSU hater. Listen, this is not the job that I wanted. I've been deputized into this service because literally I don't ever chastise y'all. I love our audience no matter which show you watch, channel you watch us on, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. I love all y'all. but to a person, male, female, everybody in between, y'all almost all underrate Auburn. It drives me insane to have to be the soothsayer, the truth teller when it comes to this, because, Mike, we got people line up in this comment section every single day that act like Auburn's a 6-6 football team. They are miles better than most of these teams we talk about. Miles better. I don't want to say that. I mean, the truth be told, I don't like Auburn at all, but I can't let these untruths stand.
There's too much inconsistency for me. I don't know what Auburn is on a. Listen, they look like world beaters at the end of the year last year, and then they get thumped by Georgia in the SEC championship, and they get thumped by UCF. I don't know. I just know that playing Washington in week 1 and giving Chris Peterson an entire offseason with like 18 returning starters is going to be a tough game for Auburn. So I'm not sleeping on them. I just genuinely think Washington is a better football matchup in week 1 against Auburn. Then you add that on to Georgia and Alabama right now, that's 9 wins. I think 9-3 is a great year for Auburn.
Now, listen, every single one of y'all are hammering me about everything every single day. Here is this reported SEC guy that just said some carpetbaggers from the Pacific Northwest with their Birkenstock sandals and their crunchy granola, philosophy on life are going to come down to Atlanta and push around some SEC team in the capital city of the SEC. That is balderdash.
Here's what I'm going to say to you. If you were going to hang your hat on Gus Malzahn being consistent enough to always pull off those games, you're going to go down a loser. I'm just telling you, you're going to get burned at some point.
Auburn by 2 touchdowns.
Ooh!
By 2 touchdowns.
Auburn by 2 touchdowns.
I mean, listen, go back to the Alabama-Washington game from a couple years ago. That's the game that some of y'all wanted to fire Lane Kiffin for. Go back and look at Washington that game. Washington did not lift a finger all day long. Now, everybody wants to make a big deal about, Kiffin not running the football. The Huskies were just, as dead as a doornail all day long. They did not lift a fingernail all day long. I got no respect for them against an SEC opponent of like top 10 caliber. No respect.
I guess we're going to find out.
Real quick final point on this, and then we'll move on. What if the likely scenario, or the scenario that I just suggested, what if it plays out? For the sake of hypothetical, give me the Washington win for Auburn here, but then the losses to Auburn and, I should say, the losses to Georgia and Alabama. That's over the predicted total for now. That's a 10-2 season. You might still have a chance at the top 10 by the end of the year, but it's losses again to your 2 November rivals. What's an Auburn fan supposed to do about that?
I think they still feel pretty good about it.
I don't believe that. They might should. I'm not sure they do.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you on that. I mean, listen, I'm not ready to tell you that I'm 100% certain that Alabama and Georgia are going to beat Auburn. But I just know the inconsistencies in the way I feel Gus Malzahn coaches to where it leads to some of that. So I think 10-2 and losing to 2 of the top 4 teams in the country possibly, I think you're okay with that as an Auburn fan. I think you should be okay with that in my opinion.
So we're mixing it up already. We haven't even gotten to the Nick Saban, Hugh Freeze stuff. In fact, let's do that right now. Item number 6 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So we talked yesterday about the AL.com report that Saban wanted to hire Hugh Freeze. Some other SEC teams inquired too, but Saban in particular wanted to hire Freeze as his co-offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, and was rebuffed. Is it rebuffed? Is that a word?
Maybe.
Rebuffed is a word, right? Rebuffed?
If you wouldn't have stopped,
I'm being told yes.
If you wouldn't have stopped, I wouldn't have called
I'm being told that rebuffed is a word. He was rebuffed by the SEC, who, based on a bylaw in place, hires of this nature have to be approved by the conference. Saban was asked yesterday, can you confirm or deny the AL.com report that you wanted to hire Hugh Freeze? That's what Saban was asked. He neither confirmed nor denied. Here's what Saban did say.
I have a tremendous amount of respect for Hugh Freeze as a coach. I think he did a fabulous job when he was at Ole Miss. He has been a friend that I've shared ideas with and spent time with and know his family, as Miss Terry does know his family. So we have a tremendous amount of respect for him. So we also have a lot of respect for the SEC, what they think is, in some cases, best for the league relative to circumstances that people created for themselves. But I have a lot of respect for Hugh, and I think he'll be back in our profession, and we wish him and his family the very best, and if we can do anything to help him, we'll be happy to do that.
Now, I'm going to say something impolite just for a second. There's nobody that I know that dislikes politics more than you.
Yeah,
I mean,
so true.
You hate politics. Mike cannot stand politics.
I hate going down that road.
There has got to be a certain portion of you that's a little disappointed to hear Saban coming across so much like a politician.
Kind of ride the fence a little bit.
With that answer right there. The most political part of it is Miss Terry knows his family. I mean, that comes across as, this is a guy that's had dinner with my wife. boy, he really comes across like a politician. For better or for worse, that's a well thought out political answer from Saban. You got to be a little disappointed in your boy.
It's so well thought out that I almost had to listen to it like 3 times relative to the situation that someone has put themselves in.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it was
how many times do you have to practice that in the front of the mirror?
Here's the transcript that I thought of in my head, though, when I heard the interview with Nick Saban. Because I said this yesterday, and this kind of piggybacks the way I felt about it. Nick Saban could have pushed back a little harder on Greg Sankey about this. I feel like he could have made this a bigger issue if he really wanted to. I respect Greg Sankey. I heard Nick Saban not wanting to trash Hugh Freeze, who he considers a friend, a family friend. He didn't want to come out and say, boy, I never wanted any part of this guy, wouldn't let him near my program, I don't want anything to do with Hugh Freeze, boy, he's got all these problems over at Ole Miss, we don't want anything to do with him. It's like he didn't want to say that. But he also wanted to cover himself and make sure he was like, listen, got a lot of respect for Greg Sankey. I know Hugh Freeze has had some issues, but we still really respect the guy. I think he was doing, in that breath, Hugh Freeze a favor, saying he's going to get back in this profession, he'll land back on it.
Yeah, as Paul Feinbaum pointed out on Outside the Lines on ESPN, I mean, they're both represented by the agent Jimmy Sexton. This is more than just a family friend he's trying to help out here. This is a colleague of his agent doing a solid for Sexton here on this. And if I'm an Alabama fan, here's what I don't like. Saban there says he thought that Hugh Freeze did a great job at Ole Miss. Well, which part of it was great? The part where he cheated in recruiting over and over again? The part where he tarnished Ole Miss's good name by, using a university-issued cell phone to call girls? Which part of this is the part that he thought was great here? Because there's a lot about Hugh Freeze's time at Ole Miss that the Rebels themselves don't think of as great. So what Saban is doing here is he's putting Alabama's reputation at stake to rehabilitate Hugh Freeze's reputation. If I am an Alabama employee or if I'm an Alabama fan, that seems like a poor trade for me because I'm asking, I can see what Saban gets out of this. I can see what Freeze gets out of this. But what does the University of Alabama get out of this?
I'm trying to pick up what you're putting down. I'm trying to dig as deep as you are and look into it in that direction. Don't feel that way at all. Because at Alabama, you pride yourself on having the best players. You have the best team, the best players, the best scheme, the best coaching staff, the best whatever, best recruiting, whatever. So that's what Nick Saban prides himself on. What he sees in Hugh Freeze is a guy that X's and O's wise in back-to-back years against Ole Miss forced Nick Saban to change what he does defensively. He saw what Hugh Freeze was doing, and he said, you know what? I've got to figure this out. I've got to figure out what exactly he's doing that is exposing so many of my players to where you can win a fluky game one time and you can put up 40 points or 50 points one time. You do it back-to-back years, you know something that I don't. So I think Saban's just being smart in that respect.
Jeremy Pettis, who is an Alabama fan, brings up a good point. Hugh Freeze, Ole Miss team did beat Alabama 2 years in a row. Who else can say that? Hugh Freeze's coaching acumen cannot be questioned. I think he's a brilliant mind, and as I said yesterday, he would probably be an upgrade as a quarterback's coach, co-offensive coordinator, the de facto real offensive coordinator. He'd probably be an upgrade over Dan Enos. But there is an embarrassing nature to hiring Hugh Freeze that Saban seems intent to ignore here. Do you agree with what I said yesterday? This is an example of Saban just not having anybody in his life powerful enough to tell him no. And that when you get to that point, you sort of veer into sort of cartoonish territory. You become Michael Jackson, sort of, pale white because nobody ever said, Michael, what are you doing to your skin? You become these people that sort of lose their way. Has Saban in the Freeze situation lost his way because nobody can tell him no?
I don't agree with that at all. I think that Nick Saban just understands X's and O's, and he understands that he got exposed by Hugh Freeze. And this is a man that to me, it's a pride thing. I think that coaches get wrapped up in, this is what it is. I'm the head coach here. I get to tell you what to do, because we've seen head coaches do that, and some of them have fallen on their pride. Tommy Tuberville's kind of an example in my case, to where I feel like that you had so much pride that you weren't willing to change what you did. To me, this is Nick Saban swallowing his pride and saying, you know what? This guy bested me a couple of times. I'm willing to admit that.
Brett Tier's final comment on this subject says, so the man, meaning Hugh Freeze, doesn't deserve a second chance. I think he does, but the question I'd ask you is, if he got that second chance in Tuscaloosa in 2018, would you be glad about it?
I'd be okay with it. Now, I'm not going to go out and say I'd be glad about it, but I said yesterday, I was mad when Lane Kiffin was hired. I did not want Lane Kiffin in Tuscaloosa, didn't want anything to do with it, but Nick Saban realized he needed to evolve. Nick Saban has proven that he should be given the benefit of the doubt on a lot of these situations, and so I'm always going to go on the side of whatever Nick Saban feels is best for that program. He's earned that right, in my opinion.
Let's do item number 7 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Let's talk about the Texas A&M Aggies. Now, the bet DSI over-under total for the Aggies is 7. Here's what I'm willing to say. The next SEC West team other than Alabama, to win the West will be the Aggies.
You just heaped on the praise for Auburn, and we have to hear about the Aggies. They're going to be the next team up.
The next team to win the West, besides Alabama, will be Texas A&M. But it's not going to happen this year.
Yeah.
7 over under. Which direction are you going?
I've got to tend to go over on this. I think that 7's a little bit too low for Texas A&M. Now, we talked about Washington against Auburn. We talked about tough games. We talked about playing, Alabama. We talked about everything on the schedule for what Auburn's going to face. Clemson's going to College Station this year. That's going to be a tough game.
So that
sets you right there. I'm already down at 10. LSU has never been a good matchup for Texas A&M. I don't know. Don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure they haven't beaten LSU since they've been in the SEC yet. I'm pretty sure that A&M has lost that game every year since 2012.
Yeah, Johnny Manziel even. Manziel having real tough trouble with John Chavis' defense. I don't know what happened to Chavis when he got to College Station, but when he was playing against A&M, he always coached up against Manziel.
No, I agree. I agree. And to me, that's been more of a tough-nosed defense, athletes all over the field type of thing, because A&M just hasn't had the athletes on defense that you would have to really make up for what LSU has as far as their roster talent. Then all of a sudden you're going to Auburn. Then all of a sudden you're going to South Carolina. Then all of a sudden you're going to Mississippi State. I think they've actually got one of the hardest away schedules in the SEC with those 4 lined up. You're at Bama, at Auburn, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State. That's tough to do. With that being said, I'm not as high on South Carolina as some people are, and I think Jimbo Fisher is going to jump up and get somebody this year that's not expecting it. So I'm going over.
A&M's won there before.
Yes.
Won there back in, I guess it would have been 2014, won there at Williams-Brice Stadium. That becomes one of those crucial swing games if you want to get to that 8 number, that 9 number, because that's really kind of where you want to be, if you want to have something to build on for 2019, which I think could be a bigger year. Some of our A&M fans who watch the show can help us fill in these details. A&M just got a big commit from a defensive lineman that was a huge priority for Texas. I mean, listen, Tom Herman has been recruiting that state of Texas for a while. Jimbo Fisher, I'm not telling you he's going to get every recruit in the state of Texas over Tom Herman, but this idea that Herman's got right of first refusal on all these guys in the Lone Star State, that is just not gonna. That's not gonna be a thing. Jimbo's gonna get plenty. And he just beat out Texas for a big defensive lineman. The Aggies fans who watch the show gotta fill me in on the details because I don't know Texas recruiting as well as I know some of the other states. But that's an example of what Jimbo's gonna do there.
Now, listen, it's not just Texas to me. I'm telling you right now, Louisiana. The state of Louisiana with Jimbo Fisher sitting over there in College Station just across the state line, I'm telling you right now. What I just say about Texas A&M versus LSU, A&M just hasn't had the athletes defensively to really match up with LSU. They've been bullied at a lot of different positions over the last 5 or 6 years by LSU. LSU hasn't had the better scheme. They definitely haven't had the better offensive scheme over the last few years. They've been bullied by some of the athletes that LSU has had. Jimbo Fisher is going to slowly start to kind of close that gap a little bit.
Richard Bernard on the Facebook comment section says when it comes to SEC West season win totals, he's got the Hogs at 10. So that's a pretty bold prediction from Richard coming in. We certainly appreciate that. But as far as Texas A&M getting over its predicted total of 7, Jimbo Fisher knows that's going to require stealing a few games. Here's how he plans on doing that. Here's Jimbo.
You got to prepare them. You got to put them in last plays of the game, last situations of the game, from the 5-yard line, 3-yard line, 10-yard line, 15-yard line, 18-yard line. Minute 32 timeouts, 40 seconds, no timeouts. You're trying to get a field goal, trying to get a touchdown. 2 minutes before the half. How you come out the second half. I mean, all those you got to get them to think those situations. How you can, as I say, steal ball games or steal momentum. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, he sounds like he's doing a cattle auction right there. Like somebody said this yesterday that he's like the perfect sort of voice and cadence for a Texas A&M. Can I hear that? Can I hear that just one more time? Like he sounds like he's doing do I get 5? Do I get 10? How about 15? Give me 20. Give me 20. Listen to this.
What's the auctioneer? What's the auctioneer on TV that says you bought it? Like that's what I'm expecting him to say.
Can I hear it one more time? Is that good? Here we go. One more time.
You got to prepare them. You got to put them in last plays of the game, last situations of the game, from the 5-yard line, 3-yard line, 10-yard line, 15-yard line, 18-yard line. Minute 32 timeouts, 40 seconds, no timeouts. You're trying to get a field goal, trying to get a touchdown. 2 minutes before the half. How you come out the second half. I mean, all those you got to get them to think those situations. How you can, as I say, steal ball games or steal momentum. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's a lot of, hey, give me 5, give me 10, you guys throw here 20, give it 25. I mean, he acts like he's selling a big old steer is what he sounds like he's selling.
If I'm an A&M fan, though, I love that. You know why? Because his brain is thinking faster and saying things faster than I can even comprehend. I'm sitting there going, slow down a little bit. Let me make sure I understand what you're talking about. Evidently, his brain is working in that speed, but you're right. I mean, that is. Whew,
but if you're looking for hope for 2018 from Jimbo on that, not a lot of close losses to turn around for 2018. 7-6 a year ago, close loss to Wake Forest, 55-52 in the bowl game. Blowout to LSU, lost 45-21. Did win a few games close, but most of the losses here, 42-27 to Auburn, 35-14 to Mississippi State. When A&M lost a season ago, it's a one-score game against Alabama, somewhat famously, 27-19. But you're talking about losses where when you lost, you really lost. I guess the UCLA game. So if I give you UCLA and A&M, that gets you, or I should say UCLA and Wake Forest, that gets you to 9. So maybe that's what he's referencing there.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's like I said, the toughest away schedule for me in the SEC, when you look at the 4 away games they have, you add in Clemson coming over there and the fact that they've never really been able to amount to much against LSU. But I'm telling you, Jimbo Fisher is a good enough coach, and he'll do enough with this offense to why they're going to sneak up and beat some teams that aren't expecting.
All right, let's do item number 8 here in our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Florida had its spring game on Saturday, and to listen to Florida coach Dan Mullen, he was really excited about what he saw. Big crowd on hand, 53,000 plus inside the swamp for that. Maybe some momentum to take into the offseason and into the fall. Here is Dan Mullen's assessment, optimistically, positively, about the orange and blue debut.
I want to keep the energy going. I forget, it was somebody the other day told me, last year, I don't know that we cracked 90,000 in attendance last year. I was here for 4 years, and they also told me that we never were less than that. And so I want to get that back. It's a combination. We're all in this together. It's not just the guys on the field. It is the Gator Nation as a whole getting the program back to where it needs to be. And I want to make sure I thank everybody and let them know how important they are to make that happen.
So that's Florida coach Dan Mullen, happy with the Florida spring game, but not every Florida fan was, not every media observer was either. I'm going to reference Will Miles here, who is a blogger that writes about the Florida Gators, and he sort of made some comparisons to Butch Jones here, saying it was sort of like a Champions of Life spring game, that he halfway expected Mullen when the game was over to start referencing comments like brick by brick, not liking the fact that former Florida players were brought in to catch passes, and then those passes counted as points on the scoreboard. He didn't like that. He said he wanted a spectacle, but it was really more of a circus. Hayes Carlin, covering this game for Gridiron Now, also made the comparison to Butch Jones on this, saying that had Jones tried the same thing at Tennessee, Florida fans would have mocked him for it. Therefore, they should be honest with themselves. They wouldn't have liked that from their own team. Cole Kublik, the SEC network analyst on WJOX, saying that what he saw from Florida made it all seem like a pretty big rebuild for the Gators.
Yeah.
Is that level of criticism both from fans who didn't like the spectacle, analysts who not quite so sure about the Gators? How fair is all of this?
I think it's fair to an extent, but it goes back to exactly the way I was feeling about Auburn's rings. How many recruits now have left the Florida Gators program after visiting Dan Mullen and say, the vibe's back, the swagger's back throughout the program? The guys that are going to the NFL, they come back and they show up and say, man, that vibe is really coming back. That energy is coming back to the Florida program. We're getting it back to where it should be. And I believe that. And the reason that I believe that is because he's got the excitement building. And listen, I'd love to sit here in this chair and be like, Bama would never do that. Bama didn't win 4 games last year. Mm-hmm. You know what? Georgia didn't win 4 games last year. Not a lot of programs were that low last year that have been historically as good as Florida has. So Dan Mullen's trying to get the energy back. He's trying to get the vibe back. He's trying to make sure people are in the stadium so that when recruits show up, they can look and say, boy, this looks like a lot of fun. This looks like a lot of fun. And recruits aren't looking at it saying, boy, this is hollow. This is all gimmicky. All recruiting is gimmicky. And I think that's what Dan Mullen's trying to pull off.
So let me make a quick point as a fan in hopes I can have some credibility as an analyst.
Gotcha.
As a Georgia fan, clearly I like this. I mean, listen, everybody knows that. I like the criticism of Florida. It's fun for me. So let me get that out of the way, that if someone's saying something bad about the Florida spring game, I'm having some fun with that. So with that out of the way, get the elephant out of the room here, my sort of analytical point on this is, I think that Florida made a mistake when it allowed itself to be defined as diminished compared to what it was, which was a program that won national championships with 2 different coaches. This is a Steve Spurrier national championship program. This is a Urban Meyer national championship program. If you want to look at the last, 3 decades, I mean, really, Florida doesn't take much of a backseat to Alabama in terms of being the premier program in the entire SEC. It pains me to say because obviously I'm a Georgia fan. I like the rivalry with Florida, But Florida's bigger than this. They are bigger than, let's bring in some, old Florida receivers and put them on the field and let's have them catch a touchdown and we'll sort of turn the thing, as what one writer said, a circus. Florida's bigger than that. And the mistake that I think that Mullen's making here is going down the route of hey, I got to go to frat houses. This is the point that you kind of made. I got to go to frat houses and cheese with the student body, as opposed to this is the behemoth of the SEC. That's what Florida used to be, and now it sort of feels like the third biggest program in the state of Florida. I mean, how has the program been redefined as smaller than it's actually supposed to be?
Yeah, no, I agree with you to that extent. And I think Katie McCarty says it best on the YouTube page with this small quote: Mullen is doing what he can, they are a mess. And that's just how I feel about it. I think the first step in recovery is admitting that you have a problem. And right now, this happened to me when Will Muschamp was hired. Huge hire. He was the Texas defensive coordinator. They hired on Will Muschamp. Boy, we're with all the athletes we have in Florida, with all the way we've been recruiting, we're just gonna walk away with these titles. Didn't work out. You go out and get a guy you think can develop the offense, Jim McElwain. Boy, this is where we're at. We're going to get this quarterback guru. He's going to make our quarterback better, our offense better. Didn't work out. And so I think this is Florida just saying, listen, we're not what we're not what we were 10 years ago, and we've got to scratch and claw our way back. So you go back and get the offensive coordinator from 10 years ago. You start to get some of that vibe back around the program. Now, in the end, they've got to win football games too. I'm with you on that. But as far as the spring goes, for Dan Mullen's first spring, I'm not going to crush him for this.
So Sean McKenzie on the Facebook comment section says, Mullen said he wants to bring the fun back to Florida. It's a huge step in that direction. So it's hard for me to respond back to this because it's hard to articulate my point. I think bringing fun back to Florida is the worthy goal here, but for me it's more of the fun and the fun and gun style as opposed to the fun and games, okay? Duck, duck, goose is a touchdown celebration, is fun and games. But putting up big points is fun and gun. Steve Spurrier, brash, trash talk, that cockiness. I mean, Florida at its best is a somewhat cocky program. Now, as a Gator hater, I don't like it, but it has been what works for Florida. This is more, I don't know what. It's sort of a PG-13 brand of SEC football, and that's not what seems to work best for Florida.
I agree with you, but I think what I've been trying to do, and I alluded to this yesterday on the show when I talked about it, this is not a Nick Saban disciple. This is not what the last two coaches
could not be more obvious.
Exactly. This is not a Nick Saban disciple. So I'm trying to open my own eyes and say there's more than one way to do this. Like, you can be successful being a kind of fun and game guy. Urban Meyer's been successful. That's the coaching tree that Dan Mullen comes from. Dan Mullen has been successful so far. So, not to get too far off topic, but Brian Finneran brought this up on the radio today talking about the Falcons.
Former Falcon wide receiver.
Too buddy in Flowery Branch right now. Too many people patting each other on the back. Too much friendship going on. He wants to see this team grind. In the end, that's what I prefer as my brand of football.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what's going on at Florida right now. I don't know if he can be successful with that, but I'm going to find out.
Here, let me do item number 9 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. I don't care who you root for. South Carolina does some awesome hype videos. They get the best video department in the SEC. Their spring practice comes to an end. They're excited about the upcoming season. Even if you don't like the Gamecocks, this will get you ready for football. Watch a short piece of South Carolina saying they're ready to take the next step with the program.
From today, we got 123 days to where to report. You got 123 opportunities to improve and get better.
Oh, but we're not done. This is just the beginning. We're just getting started.
Yeah, listen, I love hype videos. I mean, I'm a huge dork for almost any hype video. South Carolina does them better than anybody. Yeah. Their video department is on it.
No, I agree. And I love the video, too. I mean, I was getting fired up.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. That's what, right there, what they were showing, that's what off-season football
That's the kind of music that all hype videos should have, that sort of cinematic, sort of orchestral score. Yeah, give me some more of that. Now, are they going to have a good enough team to live up to the video?
Yeah, I think that's the big question. And you do kind of wonder, this is just the beginning. It's like, what exactly was the beginning? Are we talking about, obviously, the strong finish to the season, being able to beat Michigan in that bowl game? So I think that's the direction you go. I understand what the hype video is about. It's exactly that. It's a hype video. It's a recruiting tool. It's something to get the fan base pumped up. And I think they did exactly that. Listen, we can talk about South Carolina all day long. I think that it's a little bit too hyped up this year in terms of what they can do, but we're going to see sooner.
Brandon Kuhn is a Gamecocks fan. He's excited about Will Muschamp there in South Carolina, and there's certainly a reason for that to be true as well. And now for item number 10 on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list, a very different kind of video. This is more fun, and we almost never do baseball on the program, but I want to show you this quick piece of video that somebody captioned on Twitter because I don't understand why this doesn't work more often. This is a Vanderbilt executed hidden ball trick. Now, you got to watch closely to see this. Let's put the video up here. All right, so here's the throw coming back to the infield. Shortstop has it, tosses to the third baseman. Now, watch the third baseman here. You sort of pull back and you pan away, but the third baseman never lets go of the ball here. Never lets go of the ball.
The pitcher look at him right there,
Yeah,
too.
the pitcher looks at him. Now, I don't know why the person that filmed this did the vertical instead of the horizontal, but nonetheless, third baseman still got the ball. He's going back over.
Notice the pitcher never steps on the mound, though.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a ball, right? If you step on the mound, you don't have the ball. That's a ball. Third baseman's got the ball. Batter, the runner, when he goes up the bag, gets tagged out there at the end. It's hard to see that, but a well-executed hidden ball trick. Why don't more teams do that?
It's just tough because the runner never steps off usually until the pitcher's getting ready to deliver the pitch. Not only can he not step on the rubber, he can't even step on the dirt. So he's got to walk.
Oh, you can't even step on the dirt. I didn't know that.
Watch this. I mean, when you watch him, it's like he puts one foot on the dirt and kind of gets right back off of it right here. Like, I can't get on that.
Now, you were a good player in high school. Or is a hidden ball trick considered bush league, or is this good form?
No, I think it's good form. I mean, listen, this game right here, I believe, was tied 5-5 after that hit. This ended this thing right here. I think Vanderbilt ended up winning 8-7 after that.
You always get mad when I start trashing these SEC teams, but it's a poorly kept secret. Nobody likes Vanderbilt baseball. I mean, none of the SEC teams like Vanderbilt.
Listen,
they do not have a great reputation around the league.
What is there, 8 SEC teams in the top 25 right now? I mean, SEC baseball, it doesn't matter what team it is.
Yeah, I mean, Commodores are good, but they get a lot of enemies.
I don't think it's Bush League.
They got a lot of enemies.
Listen, baseball players out there can tell me, I don't think it's Bush League.
All right, here on our SEC Country Live, we're always looking to close the show the same way every single day. We're always looking for champions of life, and today comes from the ranks of sports, not the SEC, but nonetheless, a Celtics fan at an NBA playoff game. Great seats, courtside, goes to get the beer, comes back, gets a little too close to the action. But look at the clutch performance here. Celtics player bumps into him. Guy does not let go of his beer, and he's proud of it. Look at that.
Yeah, chug it now. You got to chug it after that, right?
Yeah, you got to. So he gets bumped. I mean, you see that, man. That's a tough thing to hold on to right there. A lot of quarterbacks in the SEC that fumbled footballs after a lot softer hits than that.
Yeah, and the guy, listen, the guy that's sitting there like pats him like, oh, thank you for not spilling that on me. Like, thank you, God, that you didn't.
Now, listen, you sit courtside all the time. You got the Jack Nicholson seats. God. I mean, you ever had an experience like that?
Never had anything spilled on me. I don't think I've ever even sat courtside. I've been close. I used to have a teammate that said if you didn't have your feet on the hardwood, you weren't actually at the game. So you got to at least be down on floor level if you want to go to the basketball game.
Now, those are words to live by. Hey, thanks for being with us today. Check out the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Android devices, SoundCloud. Share the show with your friends on Facebook and YouTube. Let them know we're talking about the SEC here every afternoon. We will see you again tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, for another episode of SEC Country Live.